Well, hello there, and welcome to this episode of The Terri Cole Show. This topic of today's episode has been a requested topic for the past, I'd say, 6 months. People have been asking me to do an episode on the 5 best ways of managing anxiety, because we are living in very anxious times, and people are feeling anxiety. And here's the thing. We're not talking about an occasional worry, obviously. We're not talking about being concerned about something that is concerning. Anxiety is a different beast altogether. And it's something that feels like it's with you a lot, where there's this underlying hum of unease. At least that's how I experience it. Unease, like I need to do something, like I'm forgetting to do something, that sense of like something is wrong, but I'm not positive what it is. And, anxiety is a response, right? So much of the time it's the nervous system trying to protect us from what it thinks is a threat. But the problem for many of us, especially if you are a high-functioning, codependent woman like many of us are, is that it's basically working overtime. If you are someone who has a lot of hypervigilance in your behavior, meaning you're always on high alert for problems, for issues, for things that you can solve, that is also its own form of anxiety. So we're going to be covering all of that in today's episode. So before we get to it, if you happen to be new to my YouTube channel, well, hello and welcome. Please make sure that you subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you get notified every time I roll out something new, which is every Tuesday and every Thursday. All right, let's just get on the same page about what anxiety is, right? It is persistent worry or fear, right? Feeling occasionally like this is normal, right? But for some, we're really talking about the anxiety that interferes with daily life, making it difficult or even impossible to do the things that we want to do in our lives. So let's move into why is it like that? Like right now, we are living in a time, an unprecedented time. There are so many things to be anxious about, in the real things to be anxious about in the world, that I've noticed an absolute uptick in therapy clients describing having anxiety on a regular basis, difficulty sleeping, intrusive thoughts, fearful thoughts, can't rest, can't relax their body, feeling that sense of panic coming on them. So listen, if this is you, you are obviously not alone. There are hundreds of millions of people who feel this same way. And there are lots of things that we can do to make it better. So the first thing that I think is helpful to understand is your own downloaded anxiety blueprint, right? Because many of us we come from family systems where there's a lot of anxiety. So the first thing that we're going to do is sort of raise your awareness and get some understanding around some factors that might be impacting the way that you are experiencing anxiety right now. So the causes of anxiety are multifold, we know this, and it's different for everyone. So if you've experienced trauma or grew up in a chaotic or dysfunctional family system, or saw anxiety and worrying being modeled for you in childhood, right, you're more likely to experience anxiety because it's a familiarity. It's not fully understood yet, but there is research supporting a potential genetic component to anxiety disorder. So I'm giving you questions in the guide. So just go to terricole.com/guide to access all of the questions, but I'm only going to ask you a few of them now. I want to get you into the right place in your brain to be thinking about anxiety. I find that knowledge is power, and the more that we can understand why we are the way we are, the less scary it can be. So the first question is, did you grow up in a chaotic or dysfunctional family system? Because that alone can create anxiety. Are you a trauma survivor? That also will lean us towards being prone towards anxiety. Did you have a parent or a caregiver who was a chronic worrier? Because when you think about worrying, right, this is a very socially sanctioned way of describing anxiety. When we are worrying about things that haven't happened, that may not happen, we are catastrophically projecting into the future. That's basically what worrying is. But when we call it worrying, it makes it sound like it's a completely reasonable thing to do. And I'm not saying it's possible to never have a concern about another person or to never worry about anything. But as a way of life, I know people where they spend a lot of their hours per day worrying about the people in their lives. Is their partner, their husband, their wife going to make it? Are they going to be okay on the plane? Like worrying the entire time that someone is flying in the air that something terrible is going to happen. Just a lot of bandwidth spent on really catastrophic fantasies, because that's what it boils down to. Did caring for someone else mean that you worried about them is another question. Because in a lot of family systems and cultures, being a worrywart about someone meant that you loved them, right? That was considered almost like saying to someone, I was worried about you, is like a love language unto itself. And then the last question of the questions is there a history of anxiety disorders in your family system? Because we do see that these behaviors can be passed down. Whether we conclusively say they're genetic or not doesn't really change what we're talking about today, right? If you saw a lot of that, that gets into your unconscious mind. So the more yeses you had to those questions, right, the more that you may have been wired in your childhood and in your experiences for more anxiety than other people. All right, so the next thing we want to look at is, and this is something that I would do in my therapy practice, where I have a very extensive intake form, because in that intake form, I ask questions about what supplements people are taking, how much caffeine are they consuming, how is their sleep, how are their relationships, like all of these things that I know have everything to do with mental health, not just how are you feeling, what are your presenting problems. It's so much more than that. So in the guide, I'm giving you a list that you can go through and look to see, like, what are the factors that could be creating more anxiety for you. And one of the number one things is caffeine, right? Too much caffeine can mimic the symptoms of an anxiety disorder. So when I would have people come into my office saying they thought they had an anxiety disorder, I was always very interested in what other stimulants were in their daily life. Because I knew that if someone was drinking 3 pots of caffeinated coffee per day, that we wouldn't be able to know. We needed to rule out caffeine addiction before we could rule in an anxiety disorder, because these things can create similar symptoms, but they're from different sources. Another thing to look at, so I'm asking you to look at your caffeine intake, your stimulant intake. Another thing to look at is drugs and alcohol. How much are you drinking? We all know, or most people know, that alcohol is a depressant, can be a depressant. But if you're experiencing anxiety, you may want to reach for a drink or another substance to sort of take the edge off that anxiety. And it might work in the short run, which is why people do it, right? But in the long term, too much alcohol or illicit drug consumption affects serotonin levels, and this can worsen your anxiety symptoms. So you really have to, as we're going through this list of things that you can pay attention to, I really am asking you, gently inviting you to be real honest about what you're doing. Another thing to look at is your hydration. Are you staying hydrated? Do you drink enough water? Because this is something that dehydration can intensify anxiety symptoms and cause other neurological deficiencies, right? Like brain fog. So I really want you to check how much water you're drinking each day. Make sure it's enough. Everyone says something different, right? We hear all kinds of different. I heard from the beginning it's supposed to be 64 ounces of water minimally a day. My sister drinks probably twice that. I don't know how she does anything but pee with the amount of water that she drinks. I probably drink 64 ounces is what I think. And I feel like that's enough. If I drink less than that, I can feel it though. It really does create dehydration, can mimic a lot of problems physically. And create a lot of problems physically. So just make sure you are staying hydrated. Also, what you're eating is a factor, right? If you have low blood sugar, This can make you feel anxious, can make you feel nervous, can make you feel tense. So make sure that you're fueling your God pod, as my friend Chris would say, throughout the day with something nutritious to the best of your ability. And you know if you're not. You know if you're not. And you don't have to be perfect. You just have to make sure that you're getting enough protein and that you are fueling yourself with as much whole foods as possible, meaning less stuff that's made in a lab, right? If you can't pronounce the ingredients, you probably shouldn't be eating it, is what they say. All right, another really important part of anxiety is sleep. How much sleep are you getting? Are you getting enough good quality sleep? Because sleep deprivation for sure can cause anxiety in people. And when you struggle with insomnia, and a lot of women, when I was in the beginning of menopause, I'm like through menopause now, but in the beginning, for the first time in my life, I had insomnia, and it was so anxiety provoking. I could not believe how anxious sleeping like shit made me. It was a whole entire thing. So we want to really have good sleep hygiene, take care of our sleep, make sure we're sleeping in a darkened room, wear an eye mask, make sure that you have all the blue lights off in the room so you've got nothing in there. Don't sleep with your phone in your room or a computer. All of those things should be in other rooms. Okay, so those are a bunch of questions. You guys answered them. All of this will be in the guide for you. Number 3, do an anxiety inventory. So this is something that is possible for you to do. It's terricole.com/guide where you'll find it. Think through when you are the most anxious, right? We want to look for patterns in our behavior, patterns in our thoughts, in our relationships, and in when the anxiety is striking. Because I think that the more you can identify patterns, the more you can you can alter behavior that helps you lessen your anxiety, right? So are you more anxious around particular people, right? Make a list of them. What specific situations make you feel anxious? It could be a work deadline. It could be some kind of a social situation. Are you more anxious at work or at home? Do you get anxious when you know you need to have a hard conversation or you need to set a boundary with someone? And I know that this is very true for many, many women in particular in our community. Are you very affected by the news, right? And what's going on in the world? And I think if you identify as an empath or a highly sensitive person, you probably are affected. So I think it's also very important that you protect yourself and that you are very mindful about how you're going to get your news. You cannot be re-traumatizing yourself with a 24-hour bad news cycle. You just can't. So I think it's better to read your news. Do not watch images of violent, scary stuff. Don't watch violent, scary stuff, even just in movies or television. You identifying what activates you, what triggers you, is one of the most powerful ways of you starting to change how anxious you are. Can you identify what do you ruminate about? What are the worrisome thoughts that you have that are on repeat in your mind? Write them down. Because literally only you can connect the dots, right, to your own lived experience, right? And the more information that you have, the more you self-reflect. And I'm giving you like a GPS, so you're self-reflecting in a very thoughtful and intentional way. The easier it's going to be for you to manage and calm your anxiety. And then I have a bunch of ideas about lifestyle shifts that can make a big shift in how you feel, right? Like move your body. This isn't me saying go to the gym and get a six-pack. No, just move your bod. Even if it's 10 minutes a day, it actually will matter. Stretching matters. Don't underestimate small steps. If you're someone and you've gotten out of shape, or you're recovering from being sick, or you have some kind of a chronic illness, or you are not able to, just do what you are able to do. It could be chair yoga, right? Only you know what you're able to do. And I don't assume that everyone is able-bodied, but do what you can, because it actually makes a difference. Try to get an accountability partner, right? Pick something that makes you feel good so that you can stick to it, whatever it is. We already know, get enough sleep. We've got it. I have a bunch of ideas for how you can have better sleep hygiene in the guide, terricole.com/guide. The last thing I want to talk about is writing out, right? Create a scheduled time in your day if you can. If you're a journaler, amazing. If you're not, I'm really going to invite you to try writing how you're feeling, right? So part of what the thought on this is that if we can move the anxiety from the mind to the page, it can be helpful. So it's almost like allowing yourself to do a mind dump. And also rate your anxiety daily. See if you can connect dots. Did you have less anxiety today, and did you sleep 8 hours last night instead of the 4.5 hours the night before? Maybe you had more anxiety. So a lot of this is you sort of being a detective, figuring out what is it that you need to do in your life to create less anxiety. And listen, then we have when you bring in a doctor, right? If your anxiety is through the roof, right? See a doctor. Go see a therapist. Talk to a professional. Get a treatment plan. At this point, you can, virtual therapy is something that is available pretty much everywhere. But so anyway, I don't want this episode, I don't want you to think that I'm saying you can, this is a do-it-yourself, fix your anxiety. Some anxiety is not that kind of anxiety. I want to empower you to figure out what it is for you. Do your symptoms respond positively to any of the interventions that I talked about in this episode? Then that's amazing. And if it's something that is really debilitating in your daily life, and even trying to make these changes doesn't seem to touch it, go see a professional, because you don't have to live like this, and you deserve to feel calm and safe in your own body and in your own life to the best of your ability. So if this episode helped you in any way, if you know someone in your life who suffers from anxiety, please share this episode with them. If you have questions for me, you know where I hang out most, on Instagram. I'll do a poll and you guys can ask me your questions, and I'm happy to answer the questions. I hope that my intention for this episode is that it will empower you to take action to lessen your own suffering where it is possible to do that. I hope it helped you. I hope it added value to your life. And I hope you guys have the most amazing week. And as always, take care of you.